good. Randy, how are you?
Good. I know you're up in the frozen tundra of Wisconsin this morning, but nonetheless, a little bit of warm coffee will help us get through this week's session of Coffee Talk. And speaking of the weeks, man, I cannot believe we've gotten through January this quickly.
I know it really is pretty amazing, and it has taken me, just for the record, a lot of coffee to get through January. So just want to be clear on that. So these
Yes.
coffee talks have been helping.
Yep. Yep. So, well, I thought maybe we would talk today a little bit about what directors might want to think about as they're doing their show planning for the 2022 fall marching band season. And I'm sure a lot of them are continually working on design and thinking about ideas and whatnot. We're going to have a webinar on this subject on February 9th, Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock, our regular scheduled marching arts webinar. And I know we're going to have some of our marching arts clinicians on there, about 11 or 12 of them from the roster, which is great. They're going to do their just one thing. But I kind of wanted to get an idea of what you're thinking about at this time of year as you're working on shows with people, and maybe some bullet points on things that people can consider as looking through the next couple of months of design.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've already, as I'm sure you have been, Randy, I've already been in in actually numerous design meetings, starting to talk about next season. And one of the common threads right now in those meetings is making sure that we're setting up the ensemble that we actually have for success, instead of just planning a show that we've always wanted to do or something like that. Really taking a look at the members that we have to work with, the up and coming group, and deciding what's going to be the best vehicle for them to be successful with. So I think when it comes to choosing music, when it comes to choosing a concept, I think that's still one of the most important things to keep in mind. Who are we going to be rehearsing? Who are we going to be getting ready on all this music? And are they capable of this? Are they capable of that? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And I think that's really important to think about first. The other thing that we've been talking about a lot is coming up with a concept that's going to be accessible to folks. I feel like we're on a cusp right now in the whole marching band activity where we've gone from shows that are almost ultra intellectual, and I feel like it's starting to come back a little bit more on the emotional side, the aesthetic side, where the audience can maybe have a little bit more accessibility to these shows. So we're talking about that as well. What kind of things our audience is going to enjoy, as well as our adjudication panels, etc. So I think those two things, who are we going to be writing for, and who are we planning the show for? And then the next thing would be, how do we make this show accessible to the viewers, the people that are going to be viewing the show and listening to the show in the future? I know those are two things that we've been really focused on in at least the design team meetings that I've been in.
Yeah, that's great. And as I'm reminded of conversations, it seems like I have every year with groups. It's kind of the chicken and egg theory. What comes first, the visual idea or the musical idea? And how do you feel about that? Like, do you think that the music should be something that should be selected, or do you think that there should be a visual concept first? What do you feel is the strongest fit for you as a designer?
Well, that is a tough one to answer because I've seen it work both ways. Actually, I've seen it work very successfully both ways, with the visual idea first or the music idea first. So I would say that directors and design teams right now have to kind of go with their gut. I think they know what their strengths are as a design team, and if their strengths tend to be on the visual side, like I was in a meeting the other day where our strengths are definitely on the visual side. We have some great visual designers. And so I wanted to hear what they had to say, and what their thoughts were. And if we mentioned pieces of music and they kind of poo-pooed it, I was like, okay, well, they don't feel like they can do something with that. And I think as music designers, we have to listen to that because we all have to be on the same page. The other thing is, too, that I'm learning more and more is, some of these ideas don't have to be decided necessarily by a certain date. You can have part of it figured out, but part of it needs to stew a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Part of it needs to just, everyone needs to go home and think about it. And then when you come back for the next meeting, a lot of times people will have different feelings than what they had at that meeting. And sometimes you just have to chew on some ideas for a while in your mind, think through what you've been talking about, and get away from the meeting and get away from the team for a while. And everyone just kind of think, do I really think this is going to work? And sometimes we've found that by not forcing an idea will slowly but surely come to the forefront, and it ends up being the right idea. So just be careful not to force, whether you're going music first or visual first. Make sure it's one that you all walk away from the table saying, yes, we are excited about this, instead of, well, okay, I think let's go ahead and make the decision for this, even though we may not be on the same page. And I hope that all makes sense.
Absolutely. And, when we're talking about music or visual, everything's an idea. And so, ultimately, we want the idea to communicate at its highest extent. And so if you're giving things a little bit of time to permeate your mind and churn a little bit, that's okay. That's absolutely okay, as long as you're not waiting to decide everything in May or
Right.
June and then expecting to have your music and your visual. And the other part of that too is, how do you feel about directors sometimes just saying, you know what, it's up to you guys. My hands are clean of this. Just write the show. I'll teach it. Do you ever have an instance where somebody said that to you that's hired you and you become a little nervous about that?
Yeah, I absolutely have. I personally couldn't do that as a director. I mean, I trusted my design team a ton in all the groups I taught with, whether it was Carmel or whether it was Cavaliers or now with Blue Devils. I trust my designers, but as a director, the buck still kind of stops with you, And so you better make sure that whatever design they come up with is going to be appropriate for your kids. And I think that's why it's so important that directors stay really involved, and that they have, I just believe directors should probably have the final say so when it comes to this, even if they're hiring a master design team. I think the director is still where the buck stops.
Absolutely. So listeners out there, communication is key. You want to communicate with your audience, but you got to communicate with your staff too when it comes to design. Please join us on our webinar on February 9th at 8 p.m. And we're going to have a lot of special guests. Go to the Marching Arts Educators Facebook page and join and interact with us and everyone else that is part of the page. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much, Richard. I hope it warms up.
Thanks, Randy. Great to see everybody. Good luck, everyone.
Take care.